Hey guys, this is Coach Michael Burt, the Super Coach. I believe everybody needs a coach in life, and you're listening to Success is a Choice podcast.
Providing insights to help you grow your business, improve yourself, and add value to those around you. You're listening to the Success is a Choice podcast, where you get a peek into the lives of industry leaders as they share their stories with you.
Welcome to Success is a Choice podcast, and today's guest is John Brubaker. Coach Bru is a highly sought-after keynote speaker, award-winning author, and executive coach known for his unique approach to performance enhancement. He has worked with high-level organizations and teams, including the Pittsburgh Pirates. Coach Bru is the author of 8 books, including the bestsellers Seeds of Success and Stadium Status. In fact, you can pick up his newest book, Stadium Status, for free through our friends at Audible. They are offering our listeners a free audiobook download and 30-day trial when you go to www.audibletrial.com/Success is a Choice podcast. So be sure to check that out and get yourself a free book. And now let's get to our interview with John Brubaker. Well, John, I appreciate you being with us today. Thanks for being here. I wanted to jump right into it, ask you, you've had quite a career. You've done a lot of things. And looking back on your career, what are kind of the highlights? What are kind of the things that stand out to you the most that you're maybe most proud of?
Well, I would have to start personally, Jamy, with just raising 2 great kids. And I would attribute that to marrying really well. You know, and my wife knew me back when I was a coach. So, it takes a special kind of person to be a coach's wife. And yeah, I married well. And if there were any key to any kind of success I've had, it would be that personally. And then on the professional side, I would say just, I'm a grinder. And just the ability to just put one foot in front of the other every day, regardless of feelings or circumstance. I think there's a lot to be said for that. And I know it's not a sexy answer, but just hard work.
That might not be sexy, but that is definitely not easy to do. Not everybody can grind and not everybody can work hard like that. You have an interesting story, I think, as a coach. You coach people now. You coach teams, you coach businesses, organizations, but you used to coach your own team, not necessarily someone else's, but you used to be daily grind with your own players. Describe your background a little bit and when you kind of knew it was time to get out of coaching and move into this next part of your life.
Sure. I spent 12 years as a college lacrosse coach, at small college level primarily, which I think is where the real work is. Because you're wearing 3 or 4 different hats. You're not just focused simply on coaching and recruiting. You're more of an ambassador for the school in a lot of different ways. It's like being a small business owner. You're kind of chief cook and bottle washer, But I spent 12 years at college level, small college coach, and my background growing up was, I think we all have that one person in our life who, whether we realize it or not at the time, pushed us in a positive way down the path that we're on later in life. And that person for me was my high school lacrosse coach, John Disler. As a high school kid, kids go through that awkward phase in middle school where socially they don't fit in, or, they just literally don't fit in their clothes correctly. And I'm not sure that I ever really outgrew that phase, but it definitely happened for me in high school where I just couldn't find my place. And he sat me down, talked to me, put a lacrosse stick in my hand. For the first time ever, I was sort of an athlete, and just it spoke to me. And he was really just an inspirational leader, someone you wanted to aspire to be like. And, kind of connecting the dots backwards, I really became a coach and an educator because of his influence on me, at age 15, 16. And, again, that's not something you can project or, realize until you look back on it and really reflect over time. But, the second part of your question was what led me to get out of the business. Was that right?
Yes.
Okay. I'll put it to you this way. It wasn't by choice. So I spent 12 years as a head coach. I took over a team in 2002 that hadn't had a winning varsity season, and really had a great tightly knit group who maximized their talent. We went to NCAA Final Four, finished up ranked third in the country. We lost to the eventual national champs after leading for 3 quarters. It's like to be that close, you know. And then the following year, you know, we had a decent year, nothing great by, those standards. And the next year, a great recruiting class that came in, and we're really kind of rebuilding. We lost in our Final Four team. We had lost 12 seniors and like 200 of 300 and something points graduated. So we had really kind of rebuilt. And at the end of I think it was a 7-9 season, my athletic director just walked in my office one day and sat down and said, just had a meeting with the president of the college, and we come to the conclusion there's only one thing keeping us from winning a national championship in men's lacrosse. So, Jamy, I'm thinking, you're a small college guy. You're thinking, okay, like, all right, this is it. I'm finally getting that bigger budget that I need, or they're finally going to level the playing field and give me as many scholarships as our arch rival. Or like maybe I'm getting that full-time assistant I've never had. So I'm thinking it's like one of those 3 things, maybe all of them, And he just looked at me. He said, that one thing is you. Takes out of his coat pocket an envelope, which was my buyout. And being a small private Division II school, I assure you the number on that check in the envelope was not a large number. And just said, we're making a change, you're fired. And that happened on June 14th, 2004. And June 14th is my birthday.
That's brutal.
Yeah, happy birthday, John. You're fired. So that was literally the day that I knew I had to make a change, and it was the day I became an entrepreneur. And looking back, the irony of that situation was my athletic director, we'll call him Carl. How about that?
Okay.
Because that's his name. He was famous for remembering his employees' birthdays. He'd make a big deal out of people's birthdays, emergency staff meeting. He'd call everybody in the office, and he'd bring a cart in with a big old sheet cake and card and gifts. I assure you that did not happen for me on June 14th, 2004. I didn't get a cake. I didn't get a card. I didn't get a present. But looking back, again, connecting the dots, looking backwards, that's probably the best birthday present I ever got. He really did give me a gift, and it was a gift of perspective, knowing that it was time to make a change. And it's actually been a rewarding change because instead of just coaching 45 young men each year, I have the opportunity to really reach a much broader audience, and I'm still coaching, still recruiting. My recruits just look different. My clients look different now.
Was that the first time that you really experienced a setback professionally, or, some would say a failure, or when you weren't in control of something? Was that kind of the first time that had happened?
No, it's just the biggest, most profound time. That was probably rock bottom. But my first professional setback was simply, I think a lot of coaches who are listening in this probably relate to this, was just the process of trying to land a job. The competition is so stiff for whether it's assistant coaching position or a head coaching position at any level. It's like working in the toy department of life. Everybody wants those jobs. So it just, rejection after rejection after rejection. I kept all those letters. I kept them on the wall. I just sort of made like my list. All right, well, these are the first people when I'm a head coach and I have my own program. I'm going to call and schedule them and hopefully beat them. But it is just the ability to kind of persevere in the face of rejection was good practice. When I was trying to land a coaching job for later in life. Sport mirrors life in that regard. So little did I know back then that would be very helpful in entrepreneurship later.
Yeah, that's a great perspective. And you're in your own business right now. You're working with some professional sports teams. You're working with businesses. What are some comparisons? What are some things that you see that are the same or maybe different between the different industries or the different groups that you work with?
Yeah, it's really interesting. I get asked that question a lot. What's the difference? There's going to be a huge difference between working with a professional team and working with a corporation or coaching a CEO or like working with a college team. And I actually think at the end of the day, it's no different. Yeah, they've got more resources, typically a bigger budget, but everyone really has the same problems. I think that's why everybody needs a coach, someone that can see the forest through the trees, give you that outside perspective and isn't afraid to tell you like it is. We all need that accountability. And there are way more similarities than differences. And I just think it boils down to fundamentals, Like football is just a game of blocking and tackling. Sport of business really isn't any different. There are just certain key core fundamentals in everything we do. Without them, you're going to lose. And with them, you're really stacking the odds in your favor.
We'll get back to John Brubaker shortly. Coach Brew has written a bunch of books, and I recommend them all. He knows what he's talking about, and they are definitely entertaining. But when you finish reading his books and need another one, then I would suggest The Leadership Playbook, Become Your Team's Most Valuable Leader. It's packed full of insightful stories to help student athletes become better leaders and teammates. When we help students develop, then we are also helping to influence the future in a positive way. Frederick Douglass once said, "It is easier to build up strong children than it is to repair broken men." To learn more about this book and how you can help develop students, please visit theleadershipplaybook.com. And now back to our interview with John. Do you find that the businesses that you work with, they kind of gravitate towards you a little bit more since you were an athletic coach and that you bring some athletic examples to your coaching?
I think that, and you probably could speak to this as well, Jamie, that like gravitates to like. We like people who remind us an awful lot of ourselves. So I think it's no small coincidence that my client base is almost exclusively made up of former, college or in some cases professional athletes who are business owners, and the missing link for them, like the reason they've either hit a plateau or just can't seem to really push past that sort of ceiling of success they've hit, is they went from having a coach all the way up through school, in college, professional level, and now, they're in business, and it's sink or swim. They're in the deep end by themselves, and that coaching isn't there. So I think they seek that out. The top performers, I believe, don't need a coach. They want a coach. Like look at the elite professional golfers today, like individual sport athletes. The Roger Federers, those guys for the most part could coach themselves. But they know they're better off with an outside perspective and someone that sees things a little differently. They don't need a coach. They want one,
That's a great point. And you said it earlier, everyone needs a coach. Our mutual friend, Michael Burt, says, yep. You can't see the picture when you're inside the frame. And
exactly.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, you have a brand new book, or a pretty new book, called Stadium Status. It seems to have been doing a lot of success. You've gotten a lot of traction with that. It was an interesting book, I think, the concept of it and how you went about writing it. Take us kind of through that process of writing that book and what the purpose was for it and what you hope to achieve out of that book.
Sometimes, I'm really glad you asked this, because most people don't ask that question in an interview, like what was the genesis of it? And it's interesting because a lot of times, and there's gonna be a light bulb that goes on in your head where you think of a couple of moments like this in your life, and everybody, every coach who's listening or every teacher who's listening, sometimes the student is the teacher. And that was never more relevant than in the case of this book, because I had no intentions of writing another book right away after my last one when I wrote Seeds of Success. But one thing my wife and I have always done since before our kids are born, like back when they were in the womb, we would read to our children. And every night we read with our kids. They reached an age, and my daughter was 12 at the time that I started this book. So she's like really reading to me. And our nighttime ritual was to turn the iPad on, play some music on Pandora, and read a book. We ran out of books one night. And she's like, what are we going to read? I don't want to read, one of these that we already went through again. So she flips open the iPad and just starts reading. She loves country music just like me. She's her father's daughter. So we're listening to some country music, and she clicks on the About the Artist link on the Pandora page, and she starts reading the artist's bio. And whether it's Kenny Chesney, Garth Brooks, whoever it was, it didn't matter. It read like any great story, from obscurity to national prominence, and all the hurdles and obstacles that came along the way. And as she's reading a few of these to me, she's like, you know what, Dad, this ought to be your next book. What are you talking about? She's like, these are great stories that anyone can learn from, like with their business, like the people you coach, sports teams could learn from these guys. So I just thought, okay, well, why don't we just start a blog? We'll do a blog post about that. So I did a couple articles, interviewed a couple artists. And sure enough, the deeper I dug into that, and she was kind of my research assistant, Jamy, she's like, this needs to be a book. So lo and behold, here we are 2.5 years later, and Stadium Status, Taking Your Business to the Big Time, is now a book. And the credit really goes to my daughter Meredith for pushing me in that regard. So yeah, the student's the teacher, and sometimes our best ideas are going to come, not when we're looking inward, but when we're looking outward. Saying it's a great lesson, for any leader. Listen to your people, listen to your family. There are a lot of clues that if you're mindful, you can pick up on that'll really help you.
I like that. Reading a book to your kid, we read our book to our 7-year-old each night. And when I first got my box of books for my book that was just released, he wanted me to read that to him that night. And about one page into it, he told me to get a different book. He didn't want mine. It didn't have any pictures or, what did you find? What were some of the common traits of, I've gone and listened to a lot of bands before in a bar or at a really small venue. What are some of the common themes or things that have taken not just bands but people from, essentially playing in a little bar or for a few people to stadium status like you talk about?
Yeah, I'll wrap it all up in one piece of data, and then we can kind of unpack that a little bit, in terms of stories. But at the end of the day, whether you're in a bar or you're playing in a bar or you're playing in an arena with, you could be playing in front of 30 people in a bar or 30,000 in an arena. What do you need to be able to do? A, you have to have talent. B, you need to be able to engage the audience. And all the research from Gallup, the Gallup industry for the last 12 years has not changed. If anything, it's gotten worse. But employee engagement, which if you're an employer, that's your audience, is a $3.5 billion problem in our country every single year. If you're a coach listening, employee engagement is your team, your assistant coaches, your athletic trainers, the admissions and financial aid people who are on your team trying to help you recruit your next class, whatever it is. Like, that's your audience. So the fascinating thing is, I think from an audience engagement standpoint, country music artists have a far greater, deeper personal connection to their audience than any other genre of music. They're interactive one-on-one on social media. They make extra time, in meet and greets. A lot of them don't even charge for meet and greets. It's a democratic process. They do either before or after the show. And they're just great at building fans who want to go out and beat the drum for them and help them grow their brand. And as I was just, watching different artists perform and interviewing them, I'm thinking, like, this is all, again, fundamental stuff that's not being done in the workplace. And it needs to be. So I kind of made that my mission, to tell that story. And, with the book, I look at it as kind of the anti-business book. And here's what I mean by that. I think most business books suck. And I'm a business book author. And the reason I think they suck is because it's either all theory and no practice, or it's just like a cute little metaphor that you can't really apply, and they don't actually teach you how to apply it. So I made it my business to make sure that every single strategy in each chapter was actually me walking my talk. So every chapter is 3 sections. It's the stadium status example of like how Garth Brooks engages an audience and what he does, to build raving fans. And then it's, so it's them, Brew, and you is the 3-part formula. So then it's an example of how I've done the same thing or one of my clients. And then the 3rd part is how you can go do it yourself. So literally someone could pick up that book, flip it open to any chapter, read that chapter, and go apply the knowledge immediately. I think that's the biggest challenge that any leader has is, okay, you're paid to read. You are paid. Leaders are readers. You're paid to read. But how do you then execute what you just learned? That's the biggest disconnect. So I wanted to make that connection crystal clear. And I think from the feedback that I've gotten, we've done a pretty good job with that. But, it's, and as well as I do, knowledge without action equals nothing. So.
Yeah, I like that. So you talk about engagement. You talk about how, Garth Brooks or any leader, any business owner, any employer, that's an important thing. Is that one of the biggest mistakes you see leaders or bosses make, is they don't engage with people? Or is there other mistakes, other things that you see that leaders are making?
I think they engage with people. And there's a big difference between managing and leading. What they're really doing is managing. I think you manage inventories, you lead people. And that's, I don't think enough leaders embrace that idea. Probably the best example I can give you of somebody who really gets the fact that little things matter. And it's the little things that are actually the big things. So many leaders think, all right, we're going to start this lean initiative, lean management, which is, like a product. Essentially, if you're not a business person, you don't know what lean management is. It's like productivity strategy to become more efficient. And it's a fad. I look at it kind of as like flavor of the month sort of tactic. So they look at these big things and they think, that's what we have to drive. That's what matters. It's actually the little day-to-day things that matter the most. And it's that engagement and that connection. The leader who gets that better than anybody is a friend of mine. His name's Gary Goldberg. He's the CEO of a company called Clean Brands. So if you're listening to this and you've ever gotten a blanket or a pillow on a commercial airline, you used one of his products. So he created this technology called Micron One that literally bed bugs and those little dust mites can't penetrate. So it's a genius innovation, and he essentially owns the market in that. It's awesome. The company has a great mission. But what's really cool is, regardless of the amount of success that Gary and his company have enjoyed, he does one thing every single day that he's not traveling, every single day that he's in the office. He goes around to each department, to each office with a big garbage can on wheels, and he empties everybody's trash can. Every single one of his employees, the CEO who signs their paycheck, takes out their trash. And I think that's interesting on a couple levels. When you talk about the little things are really the big things. He could be doing that to lead by example, and he could be doing that to send a message. Like, if I'm, the owner of the company and my name's on the front of your paycheck, there's no request that I could make that you would brush off and say, oh, that's too small for me, or I don't want to do the dirty work, because the CEO's taking out the trash. And as great as that might be in terms of strategy, I think, in talking to him, the real reason why he does that is he has an opportunity one-on-one to kind of get his finger on the pulse of each of his people every day. So if you're a coach listening, your equivalent of doing this would be checking in, on the basketball court one-on-one with each of your players, first 10 minutes of practice, during stretch, pre-practice, shoot around, whatever it is, one-on-one. Just get your finger on the pulse of how that person is doing. And that's what Gary does every day at 2:00. He'll go around. And the interesting thing is he loves going to the salespeople because, by 2:00, as you know, Jamie, a salesperson has faced a lot of rejection and a lot of adversity earlier in the day. And, they kind of need that shot in the arm. And he'll ask them a simple question. What can I do what are you working on right now? What can I do to help you? And he'll put his money where his mouth is. He will help them. Oh, I'm working on this account, and, we kind of need to do this for so-and-so. And can you authorize? Absolutely, I'll authorize that. Let's get this done. Let's make that sale. So he helps his people solve problems.
Man, that's awesome.
And just checks in on a personal level. Hey, how's the wife and kids? Things like that. So it's the little things like that I actually think are the big things, not some grand management initiative that you're going to roll out. At the end of the day, we're just coaching people. And the people matter more than the X's and O's.
Man, that's great. That's great. And it's simple. It's simple yet hard it's sometimes hard to execute because we don't want to do that, or we want this silver bullet when the silver bullet's right there all along. Treat people the right way.
Yeah, and people say, oh, that takes time. You want me to do what every day? Well, is it spending time? No, actually, I think it's an investment. You're investing time. When you invest, you get a return. Like his people are some of the most fiercely loyal employees I've ever encountered. So I'll give you the stadium status example of that, how the little things are actually really the big things, and why you really build your fan base one by one by one, regardless of what you do, whether you're a coach, a business owner, an athlete. You're building your fans one by one. 2 summers ago, I went to a concert. It was a small show. It was like an outdoor festival at a rodeo. And the band Low Cash, before they really blew up and were really stadium status, which they are now, they were playing at this small rodeo in Sabattis, Maine. So if you're in front of your computer, you want to Google Maps Sabattis, Maine. It's not the edge of the earth, but you can see it from there on a clear day. So I interviewed Preston Brust and Chris Lucas, who are the duo Low Cash, after the show, but I watched the whole show beforehand, and they do a masterful job of engaging the audience in the concert. But what happened afterwards at the free meet and greet that they didn't try and monetize and charge people for like some artists do, what happened was really interesting. They're doing photo ops and, in front of their big banner, and kid got his picture taken with them. I got an autograph, and then he walked away from the merch table and he left behind the guitar pick that he got that, they threw to him in the crowd earlier. And Chris Lucas noticed that this 8-year-old boy, who was now, 500 yards away in the parking lot with his mom and dad, left a guitar pick on the table. He steps out of the meet and greet line. There are like 100, 150 people waiting in line, and he grabs a guitar pick and just goes sprinting across the field into the parking lot to catch up with his kid and his family. You think about that. How much is a guitar pick? It's probably 5-10 cents. Then, in the grand scheme of things, financially, it wasn't like he left a T-shirt, a hat, or, a signed guitar on the table. He left a little plastic guitar pick. But for Chris, it wasn't just a guitar pick. That was a connection. That was a memory. That was an experience. And I just looked at that. And I just said to myself that day, these guys are going to be stadium status sooner rather than later. Because when you care that much about the little things, and you think that kid isn't going to be a fan for life now? One of his favorite artists runs 500 yards across the parking lot to hand him a 5-cent guitar pick that he forgot. Yeah. So it's no surprise they're as successful as they are because they care. And we're in an era where trust has never been lower with brands and companies and employers. And when you care, that's the real equity is in those relationships.
Yeah, people will buy stuff from those that they know, like, and trust. And so if you're caring about them, they're going to trust you a little bit more. That's a great story. I appreciate that. Hey, John, I want to finish up with some rapid fire questions.
Yeah.
and I'll just hit you with a few questions, and you give me a quick answer off the top of your head, and we'll go from there. A podcast or a book that you would recommend or are currently consuming?
If you're listening to this, you're listening to it. Listen to Coach Jamie's podcast. Well, the book I am shamelessly currently consuming is called The Leadership Playbook. Become your team's most valuable player.
Wow.
Have you heard of that?
Wow, you are. I appreciate that. I'm not even paying you to advertise my stuff. I appreciate that. I hope you enjoy it more than my son enjoyed it at his bedtime reading.
He needs to learn how to become the most valuable leader in his family. I think that's how you sell it to him. Reading that.
We are trying.
In all seriousness, I do want to say I love the book, Jamie, because facts tell, stories sell, and you've built all these wonderful, inspirational, educational stories into each chapter. And they're in really easy to consume, digestible pieces that relate to coaches and athletes, any kind of leader alike. And again, it's one of those things you can read it and you can go execute the same thing right away. And I think there's a real shortage of that right now. So when you shared this rapid fire question with me in advance, I knew that's what I wanted to hit on because it's true.
Well, I do appreciate that. Thank you, John.
And that wasn't a very rapid-fire answer, so I'll make the next one shorter. Sorry, folks.
Who would you recommend that I interview as a future podcast guest?
So this audience is coaches and athletes, and the best, I think you're marketers when you're a coach and an athlete. You're selling a vision, you're selling strategy, and not just college level with recruiting as sales, but like at any level. And I think the coach that gets that better than anybody is my buddy Jeff Osterman, who's the associate women's basketball coach at the University of South Florida. And he gets the branding and marketing, and his players buy into the vision in a very big way. He'd be great.
Excellent. I appreciate that. Who would you like to meet and spend time with that you don't currently know?
Garth Brooks.
I figured it had to be a country singer.
I just think he gets the marketing side of things, obviously, but he also gets the one-on-one connection. I've written about him, just haven't had the opportunity to meet him or interview him.
Cool. What would be one of your favorite quotes or mantras that you live by?
Yeah, my mantra is think big, start small, act now. And if I need to cite a source, that would be yours truly. I think that's where just about any initiative falls short. Is everybody thinks big, but then they don't chunk it down and they don't take it to action.
Is there a productivity tool or app or resource or piece of software that you would have a hard time doing without?
A piece of software I'd have a hard time doing without is actually not high tech. I'm more high-touch, low-tech guy. So two things. I'm a big believer in handwritten notes, so note card and a pen. And then just on a personal level, something I always travel with, and people think I'm a little weird, maybe a little OCD, but I'm kind of addicted to having Clorox wipes. I like to keep things clean, and it's convenient and easy. I carry Clorox wipes.
Okay, I got to say that very effective, very practical, very useful.
Hey, I never said I was normal, Jamie.
No, hey, those are very important. I got you. So if you were on a reality show, what show would that be?
I think we're all on a reality show.
We just don't have a camera on us all the time?
Not all the time. Yeah, I would want to be on The Bachelor, but I don't want to be The Bachelor. I want to be I think The Bachelor, the TV show, needs a coach.
Oh.
So I want to be coaching the contestants on The Bachelor because they get so worked up and stressed out, these ladies, and it's all for naught. I think they need a coach.
That is a great answer. I was hoping you would go somewhere other than be one of the females on there. Once you said you didn't want to be The Bachelor, I was trying to think of who else is on The Bachelor other than The Bachelor and the ladies.
I mean, how many seasons in are they now?
I have never watched an episode.
They got to shake things up a little bit. You know, those kind of shows get stale if you don't change it up a little bit. Like American Idol always changes the hosts and the judges. The Bachelor needs a coach.
That's a great idea. I like that. I might try to steal that. I might try to write in, try to get that, make that happen.
Well, let's do this, Jamie. They could have associate coaches, and it'd be you and me.
I like that. It could almost be a team.
One week you coach the Bachelor, I coach the Bachelorettes, and then the next episode we switch. Be like counterintelligence, double agents.
That would be interesting. I'd probably have to watch the show first. But other than your current job, what would you want to do if you could do anything? I guess work with a bunch of pretty women, coaching pretty women on The Bachelor.
We're doing that, man. We're going to do that. It's going to happen. I think I'm doing exactly what I was meant to be doing. You know, the way I came about it. Happy birthday, you're fired isn't necessarily the greatest, it's not the greatest way. It makes for a great story, but if I won the Powerball lottery tomorrow, I would probably do the exact same thing I'm doing right now, man. That's how much I enjoy it.
Well, that could be a title for your next book, Getting Fired on My Birthday, or From Happy Birthday to You're Fired. Something like that.
That is my next book, and I've already purchased the domain. I like the way you think, man.
There you go. Well, John, I really appreciate your time. Where can people reach out to you? What's your website? What's the best way to connect with you?
Best way to connect with me is go to coachbrew.com. That's coachbru.com. Or if you want to be difficult or can't spell, you go to coachbrew.com and they'll get you the same place. That's a little tip for you. If you have a website, make sure you misspell your domain name and redirect it to where you really want people to go, because nobody pays attention. Nobody reads anymore, and most people can't spell.
My name is always misspelled, and that's one of the best pieces of advice I've heard today. So I am going to go do that. I'm going to purchase a misspelled website for myself. But, man, I appreciate it. We'll put all that stuff in the show notes, and I appreciate you spending time with us.
My pleasure. Thank you, Jamie. I appreciate you.
John Brubaker had some great insights today, and his books are definitely top-notch, and I can recommend his latest book, Stadium Status. It's a great read, even though he interviews some country music artists, and I am just not much of a country music fan. But I am a fan of John Brubaker and his work. By the way, what a story of his, getting fired on his birthday. Yikes. Now, we don't want you to miss out on any future episodes, so please take 1.2 seconds and click that little subscribe button on your phone. And until next time, remember that success is a choice. What choice will you make today? Will you make today?